So, as you all know, on February 25th, 2021, Joe Biden, the so-called lesser of two evils, he bombed the country where I was born. He bombed Syria. And I want to talk about the legality, or rather illegality, of this strike. So it's a very interesting one because, in the grand scheme of things, when we talk about the war on terror, right, the so-called war on terror, a lot of the things, these drone strikes carried out by Obama. Actually, I'll get to the examples in a second. But a lot of the war on terror has been carried out based off of the AUMF of 2001. The AUMF, this is the authorization for the use of military force. Okay, so I need to explain the way this works because it's a bit complicated, right? So as you all know, in the U.S. Constitution, it says clearly the president is the commander in chief. Okay, he can. He's in charge of the United States Armed Forces, and he can deploy them in service of the United States. Very broad definition, interpret it how you may. However, the power to declare war resides with Congress. Okay? And so, after the Vietnam War, okay, when it turned out that Nixon was bombing Cambodia secretly, Congress, they came up with the War Powers Act, right? So the War Powers Act was meant to reel in the executive, to limit the executive's reach, and basically it set out a bunch of conditions, right? You can't just randomly deploy U.S. troops anywhere you like or engage them in hostilities without informing Congress, right? So let me just show you very briefly the War Powers Act over here. This is from 1973. Okay, so I think you can see it there. Okay, so there are conditions here. So before engaging the United States in hostilities, he has to consult with Congress. The president must consult with Congress, okay? And, if, for example, there's some kind of imminent threat or something where, he wasn't able to, he has to go and notify Congress within 48 hours, okay? So if, there was some risk posed to the United States and the president has to engage the U.S. Armed Forces in hostility, he must tell Congress within 48 hours. And he's not allowed to commit U.S. troops for more than 60 days. And, Congress has to reauthorize the deployment. Okay, so this can't go on forever, essentially. Now, essentially, what happened, after 9/11. Sorry, just to finish. That's when the president takes action on his own. Other exceptions where he can engage the United States in conflict is if he's given, prior authorization by Congress, okay? And that's listed over here. So just give me a second, pull it up for you again. There you go. So he can either do this if he's given authorization by Congress or Congress has declared war on another country, okay? Those are the only other two conditions where it's fine, okay? Now, when we had 9/11, a few days later, Congress signed the AUMF of 2001. Okay, so the authorization for use of military force 2001. And what does that say? What does it say in the AUMF of 2001? It says that the president, here, I'm going to pull that up for you. Okay, it authorizes him to essentially go after the president is authorized to use all necessary and appropriate force against those nations, organizations, or persons he determines planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11th, 2001, or harbored such organizations or persons in order to prevent any future acts of international terrorism against the United States by such nations, organizations, or persons. It's a blank check, essentially, right? This was a blank check. This AUMF of 2001, this has been used by, Bush for all his crimes all over the world. Obama used it to justify his drone strikes in Pakistan, in Yemen, in Libya, you name it, right? Oh, we're fighting terrorism, right? It's ambiguous language. I mean, it doesn't even specify Al-Qaeda. It doesn't even say that. It just says anyone who is remotely connected to or, harbored. You don't even have to prove it. Just look at the people who ended up in Guantanamo Bay, right? One of the people, when I was covering the Assange case, one of the people who's supposed to testify and all of a sudden his video link magically doesn't work, is a CIA torture victim, and he's completely innocent. And nothing to do with Al-Qaeda, right? The CIA still tortured him. They kept him even after they knew he was the wrong guy. And you have other people who are still in Guantanamo Bay, even though they have no connection to Al-Qaeda, right? So it's a blank check to do whatever the president wants. And, you know, the one in 2002, I'll pull that up over here. This one was when they just before they invaded Iraq in March of 2003, right? This one, Trump used this one to justify, or try and justify at least, his assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, right? So I pulled that up over here, right? So this is an article from February 14th last year, 2020. The White House cites 2002 Iraq war measure to justify killing Soleimani. And I mean, even that is a stretch of epic proportions. I mean, Soleimani, you know, Pompeo was asked a million times, what is this imminent threat that he posed? Like, can you tell us if there was an attack that was planned? And he's like, oh, I don't have a day or a number. I can't give you it, because there was none. There was none. The guy is an Iranian general, and he was on his way with Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who's a senior PMU commander, you know, to meet for an official meeting, a diplomatic meeting with the Iraqi government, right, with the prime minister. And they assassinated him on Iraqi soil, and then they're like, oh, we're just going to use the AUMF to justify that because it happened in Iraq. You know, it's completely illegal, has nothing to do with the Iraq war, which itself was also illegal, nonetheless. And so, circling back to what Biden did, I'm going to read you the letter that he wrote, because as I just pointed out, if you take action as the president, you're the president, you take military action, you have to notify Congress. That's what Biden did under the War Powers Act. He complied with that rule. And let me read you what he said in his letter to the Speaker of the House, okay? So this is dated February... I'm sorry, I think this is... sorry, I'm sorry, this is the wrong goddamn one. This is from February 11th. I want the one from February 2017. You'll excuse me. I had this pulled up for you yesterday, so... give me 1 second to pull that up. That's the wrong... He's referring to emergency at the border. So, here we go. I got my White House letters mixed up. So he says over here that the... There we go. Sorry for the delay. So this is dated February 27th, as I mentioned, right? And he says here, in my direction on February 25th, United States forces conducted a targeted military strike against infrastructure in eastern Syria used by Iran-supported non-state militia groups. Those non-state militia groups were involved in recent attacks against United States and coalition personnel in Iraq. Okay, so again, I told you about this attack in Erbil with the contractor, and then, of course, about the green zone, about the embassy on a week later. So he says, in response, I directed this military action to protect and defend our personnel and our partners against these attacks and future such attacks. Okay? And he talks about self-defense here, essentially, right? I directed this military action consistent with my responsibility to protect the United States citizens both at home and abroad, and in furtherance of United States national security and foreign policy interests, pursuant to my constitutional authority to conduct U.S. foreign relations and as commander-in-chief and chief executive. Okay? And then I'll get to the UN law in a second, okay? But as you can see here, he cites the War Powers Resolution and that he's fulfilling his supposed obligation to inform Congress. Now, I just want to say one thing here, okay? You'll notice that he's not citing the AUMF, okay? That's very interesting. He's not citing the AUMF. I don't know if that's because this took place inside of Syria, right? Again, even Trump assassinating Soleimani, an Iranian general inside of Iraq, is ridiculous to cite the AUMF. But he's not citing it here for all intents and purposes. He's talking about, I was doing something to defend the United States, right? Again, they call them defensive airstrikes, which is absurd. Syria is not a war with the United States, at least not officially, but the United States is definitely a war with Syria, right? Syria has not done anything to the United States. Syria is not a threat to the United States. This is absurd to claim self-defense. You are illegally in Iraq. So again, I'll get to the UN charter in a second, but he's going with the war powers here, essentially, right? He's citing the Constitution and he's going by the war powers. He's not going with the AUMF as Trump did, as Obama did, to justify his drone strikes in Pakistan, for example, right? And all these other, you name it. Like this is the thing about the war on terror. This is the thing with the AUMF of 2001. They've been using it as a blank check to go wild, okay? But do you think Congress is going to hold him accountable for any of this? Of course not, right? It doesn't matter that what he's saying here is complete horse shit. They know. You think they're stupid? They know that this is not defensive. This was offensive. I mean, even if you go with his logic that they're attacking Iranian-backed militias over something that happened in Iraq, which they illegally invaded inside of Syria. I mean, you're aggressing 3 countries here all at once. You're committing an act of aggression, rather, against 3 countries here all at once by your own logic, right? By your own admission. So, I mean, this is obscene to say that it was in the name of defending the United States. This is nonsense. And nonetheless, they're not going to hold him accountable. I mean, just think about Trump. Trump assassinated another general. And to say he's just a general is kind of an understatement because, I mean, even Trump's own administration, they admitted that this guy's like, the second most powerful person in Iran. Okay, I mean, that's perhaps an exaggeration, but, Suleimani had tremendous reach across the Middle East, okay? I mean, it doesn't matter how you rank him, like, oh, he's second or third most important in Iran. He's one of the most important people in Iran, period. And in the Middle East, period. Okay, this guy kicked ISIS fucking ass. Okay, he's the reason that Christians like me in Syria, right, have not been slaughtered by Daesh, by ISIS. He's the reason that Daesh has disappeared virtually from Syria. They used to have half of our territory. Now they're gone. That's not thanks to the U.S.-led coalition. No, that's thanks to people like Suleimani, whether you like him or not. Okay, that's his work. That's the work of the Popular Mobilization Forces, the work of the Syrian army, the Russians, Hezbollah. That's thanks to them, whether you like it or not. And I don't care if you like it or not. That's the truth. Nonetheless, they know how important this guy is. They know they could have ignited a war with Iran. And Iran would have been completely justified to respond to that. And they still didn't do anything. What did they impeach Trump over? A phone call to Ukraine and then inciting an insurrection. What about inciting a goddamn war in the Middle East? What about that? No, they don't give a shit. They don't give a crap. Do you remember AOC at the time? She called him a mad king, right? Over what he did in Syria when he bombed Syria, and he also cited the AUMF, right? Do you remember Kamala Harris questioned the legal rationale? They didn't do anything over that either. So Trump bombed Syria. Trump assassinated Soleimani. He tried numerous times to ignite a war with Iran, right? And Iran has been extremely patient. I mean, like, I don't even know how they do it. And they didn't do anything to Trump. You think they're going to do something to Biden? They're not even talking about this. They're not even mentioning the fact that he bombed Syria. They don't even care. It's like it didn't happen. Amazing, right? Now, what's interesting is you've had Senators Kaine and Young. They've proposed legislation to repeal the AUMF. Okay, and I posted about this on Twitter because I thought this was interesting, and I'd like to correct myself over here because, I mean, while it appears to be something good, I'll tell you why it's not in a second. And if you've been paying attention, you might realize why. So Kaine and Young, this is from Tim Kaine's own website. Kaine and Young introduced a bill to repeal the 1991 and 2002 AUMFs. And yes, I was also, I mean, I was surprised, but also not surprised that the 1991, from the first Gulf War, AUMF is still a thing. Yes, why would they repeal that? Of course it is. So, they reintroduced their bipartisan legislation to repeal the 1991 and 2002 authorizations for use of military force against Iraq. The bill would formally end the authorizations for the Gulf and Iraq wars 30 and 19 years, respectively, after these AUMFs were first passed, reasserting Congress's vital role in not only declaring wars, but in ending them. The repeal of these authorizations also recognizes the strong partnership the United States now has with a sovereign, democratic Iraq. Yeah, remember Iraqis, the Iraqi parliament Again, this is so ironic, right? They talk about a sovereign democratic Iraq, and then when the sovereign democratic Iraq votes to expel all foreign troops, they don't listen. Remember after Trump assassinated Suleimani, the Iraqi parliament voted to expel all foreign troops? They're not going anywhere. They don't care. So, like, you can't win with them, right? You can't win. So they say over here, last week's airstrikes in Syria show that the executive branch, regardless of party, will continue to stretch its powers, Kane said. Okay, Congress has a responsibility to not only vote to authorize new military action, but to repeal old authorizations that are no longer necessary. All right. So let me tell you now why I caught myself actually. And I was like, hold on a second. They're really clever, these motherfuckers, aren't they? What years did they mention here? 1991 and 2002. Now, sure, you might say that's a good thing. I mean, they should have never invaded Iraq to begin with. Those AUMFs did not make it legal. Where's the 2001 AUMF? Oh, yeah. You thought we wouldn't notice, huh? You motherfuckers. So basically, they want to get rid of the ones that, allegedly justify their invasion of Iraq under U.S. law, but not the one that allows them to wage their war on terror and just, bomb Libya, bomb Somalia, bomb Sudan, bomb Syria, bomb whoever they want under this guise of, we're fighting terrorists, right? It doesn't even say terrorists in the AUMF. I read it to you. It just says anyone who harbored or, it doesn't even matter if it's true. It doesn't have to be true. It's just fucking lies. You just say, the guy speaks Arabic. Just bomb him. They left that out. How convenient, right? How convenient. And nonetheless, I pointed this out on Twitter, and you'll excuse me just a second so I can pull this up because I think this was a few days ago, after they released this legislation, Senators Kane and Young. I pointed out that you had a certain congresswoman, right? Again, she's not the only one, but a certain congresswoman who very correctly criticized the AUMF. And if you'll give me a second to pull this up. Wonderful. Here it is. So I want you to look at this tweet, okay? You see this? There's a certain congresswoman who once pointed out how bad the AUMF is. She said, honestly, we shouldn't have been in there either, and we should end the AUMF now while we're at it. Okay, so this is part of a thread here where she's talking about, she's talking about the Iraq War, and then she corrects herself, says Afghanistan War. Again, those are two different AUMFs, as we just pointed out. There's 2001 and 2002. Both of them should be repealed, right? She understands. That's the point here. She knows what the AUMF is. She understands. And I asked her if she's going to support the legislation, okay, that, Tim Kaine and Todd Young have put forward, right? Because you would think that if she understands how bad this is, if she understands what the AUMF is and the illegal wars that it's been used to justify, that she would jump at the opportunity to talk about it and lobby for it, right? I mean, sure, those are senators. She's in the House. And nonetheless, she can still support legislation in the Senate. There's nothing wrong with that. She can publicly lobby for it. She can use her platform, right? She goes to stream on Twitch. She has 500,000 people show up. She has millions of followers. She was second to Trump in influence on Twitter. I mean, why is she being quiet on this? Why is she being quiet on Biden bombing Syria? Why is she only against the AUMF when Trump does it? Why does she call it unconstitutional when Trump does it? But she doesn't make any mention when Biden also, violates the Constitution. Now, sure, you can say that, Pelosi was briefed about it before Biden did it. Yeah, what about the rest of Congress? The legislation, the War Powers Act, doesn't say you have to only brief the Speaker of the House. It says you have to brief Congress, all of Congress. Okay, that's the point. You have the legislative trying to reel in the executive. It's it's the role of Congress to declare a war. And again, I haven't even gotten into the international law part just yet. But do you see the fucking hypocrisy here? Do you see how staggering this is? These motherfuckers that are calling themselves progressives, they're continuing the same old shit from George Bush's days. And you want to go back even further? Go right ahead. It's the same old policies, right? For decades and decades and decades. They're not doing anything. They are just chilling. They're saying nothing about the $15 minimum wage. They're letting that be nixed from the bill. They're not saying anything about Biden bombing Syria. It's fucking pure hypocrisy. I mean, look at them. Like, how can you not be outraged about this? How can you not be outraged? You're only outraged when Trump does it? It's still bad when Biden does it, you motherfucker. So going into the other part of Biden's letter to Nancy Pelosi, to Congress, where he says that, his bombing of my country, of Syria, which again, the United States is not threatened by Syria, has no business in Syria. In this letter, he talks about international law, right? He says that, over here, he says that the United States took this action pursuant to the United States' inherent right of self-defense as reflected in Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. So let me pull up Article 51 for you because it's very important that you see it. So over here in Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, okay, we'll get to 2.4 in a second. He says, nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. Okay, so that means, you know, if you're attacked, you have a right to defend yourself, and of course you don't have to wait until the United Nations Security Council actually steps in. But you know, you have a right to defend yourself until they do, right? This is, of course, logically, that's in the case of an imminent threat. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. In if it actually there was an imminent threat, there wasn't. They're lying, just like Trump lied. So that's what it says here, okay? And it says measures taken by members in the exercise of this right of self-defense shall be immediately reported to the Security Council, okay? And shall not in any way affect the authority and responsibility of the Security Council under the present charter to take at any time such action as it deems necessary in order to maintain or restore international peace and security. So this article over here is just saying you have a right to defend yourself, okay? Now, if you look at the French version, it's interesting because some of the language differs when they talk about, aggression and force, and they say armed force, or armed aggression. But I just want to point out one thing over here, because there is some debate between legal scholars about whether this applies only to other member states. If you look at Biden's letter and what they've been saying in the media, look what they say. They don't talk about coming under attack from another state. They say by Iran supported non-state militia groups. They're clearly saying they're non-state militia groups. So I don't know if this article applies in that context. I don't know if you can invoke Article 51 of the United Nations Charter because some militia groups attacked you in a country that you are illegally occupying. Iraqis are the ones who have a right to defend themselves, not you. Okay? And again, that's what they don't want you to know about when they say Iranian-backed militias, they're talking about Iraqis. These are Iraqis. It's a popular resistance. It's a popular coalition of various groups. Most of them are Iraqis. The vast majority are Iraqis, right? And it's not just Shia groups, as they try to tell you, like, they're all Shia groups. They're all Iranian, as if that makes it as if that makes it okay to kill them just because they're Shia or something. Like, look at this twisted logic. They're not just Shia. They're also Sunni. You have Yazidis. You have Christians. You have various brigades. It's a coalition. They are the ones who are defending themselves from you because you illegally fucking invaded their country in 2003. How the fuck are you defending yourself in their land? You are the occupier. You are the aggressor. You invaded them. How dare you talk about self-defense? And not to mention, they're talking about this in Syria. What the fuck are you doing in Syria, you motherfucker? God, it's unbelievable. And so I go back to Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter. Okay, so Biden conveniently leaves this out. Look what Article 2 says. Article 2, Section 4. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Okay? So you are the one who is violating the United Nations Charter. You have no right to violate the territorial integrity of Syria, of Iraq, of Iran, of any other nation. And now they're coming here trying to justify this under the United Nations Charter. Like, they're so scandalous. They're honestly so scandalous. And they have no shame. They have absolutely no shame. They lie about their own laws, about the U.S. Constitution. They violate the War Powers Act. They violate even their own AUMF. They stretch it beyond belief. And then they even dare to try and spin it as self-defense under international law. And again, you must always keep in mind that, because people often forget this, it doesn't matter if the entire Congress knows beforehand that, Biden is going to bomb Syria. It doesn't matter if the entire Congress votes for it. Every single person in Congress votes for it. It doesn't make it legal. That doesn't supersede international law. Just because the U.S. Congress voted to invade Iraq does not mean that that was legal or justifiable in any way. It was still illegal under international law. It was still a crime of aggression. It doesn't matter what the U.S. Congress votes to do. You know why? Because Iraq is not under fucking U.S. jurisdiction. It's not a state in the United States. It's its own country. So your law does not mean fucking shit in Iraq. Do you understand that? Or in Syria, or in Iran, or any other member state of the United Nations, or on any other goddamn landmass outside of your borders. So I can't believe that I have to spell this out. Apparently I do, because people think that it's astonishing, right? People really buy into this American exceptionalism shit. They think, oh, well, if our Congress voted for it or okays it, then that's okay. No, it's not okay, asshole. Okay, your Congress is not above international law or above the United Nations. And yeah, the United Nations has many goddamn faults. Yeah, we're not going to kid ourselves there. But again, you have to keep this in perspective. And Biden is a goddamn scumbag. He's a warmonger. He helped start the war in Iraq. He helped do that shit, right? He's never met a war that he didn't like, ever. And if I'm not mistaken, ironically, we're talking about the AUMF. I think there's a photograph of Bush signing the goddamn AUMF, and Biden is standing behind him. Biden is standing behind him. And he says, oh, Bush tricked me, right? It's not, oh, I apologize. I'm a piece of shit. I should be nowhere near the Oval Office after what I did in Iraq. Oh, no, George Bush tricked me. Well, if George Bush tricked you, maybe you're not fucking fit to serve in the Oval Office. How about that, right? I can't with these people. And so you have no one covering this, like no one even questioning this. No, it's nothing, right? It's astonishing. And again, I'm by no means a lawyer or a liar, as they say in the South, liar. But I mean, you really don't have to be a rocket scientist or a scholar of international law to understand that they are lying. They're lying through their goddamn teeth, and that's all they've ever been doing. And they've been using this AUMF as a blank check to do whatever they like, and they just piss all over international law. And then they have the stones to try and act like, oh, we're acting in accordance. You see, we notified Congress. You see, we notified the Security Council. Yeah, with what? A pack of lies? Go take your letter and wipe your ass with it. Motherfuckers. They're no different from George Bush, no different from Obama, no different from Trump. It's the same shit. It's the same imperialist crap. I warned you about this. I told you this was coming. And look at them. Look at these cowards. Look at this squad. Look at these progressives. Not a word. The only one who said anything is Ro Khanna and Ilhan Omar, right? And even them, they don't say, oh, let's go and repeal the AUMF. Are they supporting this legislation by Tim Kaine and Young? His first name escapes me, but they're not even supporting that one. And that one doesn't even repeal the AUMF of 2001, which is the justification for the war on terror. And Biden didn't even invoke those. He just straight up, claimed self-defense and claimed that he was defending the United States under the Constitution and the War Powers Act, which is a fucking lie. What are you doing in Syria on the other side of the planet? You have no business there. There was no imminent threat. God, they don't care that he's lying. They just let him get away with it. And so you see, the problem here is well, yes, there are many problems with the laws. You could have made them much stricter, of course, right? But this is the problem when you have laws and no one follows them or applies them and lets the president get away with it unchecked, right? And why do they do this? Because the entirety of Congress, all of Congress, they're imperialist scum. They are warmongers or cowards at best. At best, they're fucking cowards, right? At best. Maybe they're good people, but they're cowards. And again, I don't know why you go and work in the cesspit of Washington, D.C. to be a coward. I don't understand that. I mean, okay, one of you, two of you, all of you? You're not going to do shit? No, we can't accept this. They are showing you implicitly that they are on board with Joe Biden. They are riding with Biden. They are part of Uncle Joe's Rainbow Coalition death cult, right? Again, it's not an accident that you have a Secretary of Defense now who, yes, he's the first black man to lead the Pentagon. Yeah, he's also the first black man to lead the Pentagon who also happens to be a former board member of Raytheon, who's a weapons manufacturer, right? And yeah, you have the first woman who's leading the, who's now director of national intelligence. Yeah, she's also a co-author of Obama's drone strike program, which again is, I mean, Jesus, do I even need to go into how horrendous that is, how illegal it is, how many people have died because of that? What's the point, right, of having this diversity when there's no diversity on policy, when it's actually just a continuation of George Bush? What, you're just diverse neocons? Hey, even Bush's cabinet had, Colin Powell, had Condoleezza Rice. I'm not interested in that kind of diversity, right? If you're just going to go and murder people of color all over the global south. No, I'm not interested in that. That's not diversity. That's just neocon bullshit.